Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
After my sister-in-law Brenda publicly humiliated me about my twin boys being uncontrollable monsters. At Thanksgiving dinner, I made a decision that would accidentally expose decades of family manipulation. When Brenda demanded my 7-year-old sons, Jake and Tyler, never attend another family gathering because they were ruining everyone's peace, I quietly agreed and kept them home. What happened next revealed a disturbing truth about my controlling in-laws and changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage to Sarah. My name is Sullivan, and 3 years ago, I married the woman I thought was my soulmate. Sarah came from money, the kind of Connecticut old money family that owned a mansion with actual servants and held charity galas in their backyard. I was a union electrician from Hartford who met her at a coffee shop where she was grading papers as a substitute teacher. When we fell in love, I brought my twin boys Jake and Tyler into the relationship. They were 4 then energetic little guys who loved building with Legos and playing catch in our small apartment's courtyard. Sarah's family seemed welcoming at first. Her father Richard owned 3 car dealerships and talked about expanding into electric vehicle sales. Her mother Linda organized fundraisers for the local animal shelter and always asked about my work. But it was Sarah's older sister Brenda who set the tone for family gatherings. Brenda had married a corporate lawyer named David and lived in a sprawling colonial 5 minutes from her parents. She had no children of her own, but plenty of opinions about everyone else's. The Thanksgiving that changed everything happened at Richard's estate. The main house sat on 4 acres with manicured gardens, a 3-car garage, and a dining room that could seat 20 people comfortably. 40-plus family members gathered that year, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends who'd been coming for decades. Sarah's family prided themselves on maintaining traditions from the formal place settings to the requirement that men wear blazers to dinner. Jake and Tyler had been on their best behavior all morning. They wore the navy blue slacks and white button-down shirts Sarah had picked out, sat quietly during Richard's lengthy blessing, and used their inside voices during the elaborate meal. After dinner, when the adult conversations turned to stock portfolios and political opinions they couldn't understand, the boys asked if they could play outside with their cousins. The backyard was perfect for kids. Richard had installed a swing set years ago for visiting grandchildren, and the lawn stretched out like a football field. Jake and Tyler joined 8 other children in an impromptu game of flag football. I watched from the kitchen window as they ran and laughed, finally able to burn off energy they'd been containing all day. That's when the accident happened. Tyler was running a route pattern when his cousin Jeremy threw a wobbly pass. Tyler jumped high to catch at his momentum, carrying him backward into one of Linda's decorative garden statues. The ceramic angel toppled over and shattered on the stone pathway below. The crash brought every adult running outside. I reached the boys first, checking that Tyler wasn't hurt and helping him up from the ground. He had scraped his knee, but was more worried about the broken statue than his minor injury. "I'm sorry, Dad," Tyler said, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean to break it." Before I could respond, Brenda came storming across the lawn like a woman possessed. Her face was flushed red, and she pointed directly at my sons. "Those undisciplined brats have destroyed Linda's anniversary gift," she shouted loud enough for the entire family to hear. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. These children have no manners, no respect, no place in civilized company." I felt my blood pressure rising but tried to stay calm. "Brenda, it was an accident. The boys were just playing with their cousins." "Playing," she screeched. "This is what happens when children aren't taught proper behavior. Look around, Sullivan. Do you see any other children breaking priceless family heirlooms?" The other kids had stopped their game and were staring at us. Several adult family members formed a semicircle around the confrontation, watching like spectators at a sporting event. I glanced at Sarah, expecting her to defend her stepsons, but she stood frozen with her arms crossed. "I'll pay for the statue," I said evenly. "It was an accident, but I take responsibility." "This isn't about money," Brenda continued, her voice carrying across the yard. "This is about respect and discipline. These boys run wild every time they're here. They're loud during dinner, they can't sit still during conversations, and now they're destroying property." Jake stepped closer to his brother, both boys looking confused and hurt. Tyler's scraped knee was bleeding through his torn pants, but Brenda showed no concern for his injury. "They're 7 years old." I said, my patience wearing thin. They were playing a normal game with their cousins. "Normal for children who haven't been taught boundaries," Brenda shot back. "Either they learn proper behavior or they stop coming entirely. I won't have family gatherings ruined by constant chaos." The yard had gone completely quiet, except for the sound of Tyler sniffling. I could feel 40 pairs of eyes watching this confrontation unfold, and not one person was stepping in to defend two little boys who were being verbally attacked by a grown woman. Richard finally spoke up. "Perhaps we should discuss this inside," he said diplomatically. "No," Brenda said firmly. "This needs to be said publicly so everyone understands the expectations. Either Sullivan gets his children under control or they can stay home next time." I looked around the semicircle of family members, searching for any sign of support. Linda looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. David stared at his shoes. Even the other children seemed scared to move. Only Sarah's young cousin Emma met my eyes with what looked like sympathy. "Come on, boys," I said quietly. "Let's go inside and clean up Tyler's knee." As we walked toward the house, I heard Brenda continuing her rant to the assembled family about standards and appropriate behavior. Jake slipped his hand into mine while Tyler limped beside us, and I realized that my sons had just been publicly humiliated in front of people who were supposed to be their extended family. The drive home was tense. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, while the boys asked quiet questions from the back seat. "Dad, why does Aunt Brenda hate us?" Jake asked. "She doesn't hate you," I lied, glancing at Sarah for support that didn't come. "Sometimes adults get upset about accidents." "But it really was an accident," Tyler added. "I was just trying to catch the ball like Jeremy threw it." "I know, buddy. Sometimes people get more upset than they should." Sarah finally spoke when we pulled into our driveway. "The boys need to understand there are different rules at different places." I stared at her in disbelief. "Different rules." Tyler got hurt, and Brenda screamed at them in front of the entire family. "Where's your support for your stepsons?" "I'm just saying, maybe we need to prepare them better for formal family events." That night, after putting the boys to bed, I lay awake thinking about what had happened. Jake and Tyler were good kids. They got excellent grades, helped with chores, and treated others with kindness. They weren't perfect, but they were normal, healthy 7-year-olds who deserved better than being called undisciplined brats by their step-aunt. The next morning, my phone rang early. I could hear Sarah talking quietly in the kitchen, but I couldn't make out the words. When she came back to the bedroom, she looked relieved. "That was Brenda," she said. "She wanted to clear the air about yesterday." "Did she apologize for screaming at the boys?" Sarah hesitated. "She's concerned about maintaining family harmony. She thinks maybe some time away from family gatherings might help Jake and Tyler learn better self-control." I sat up in bed, fully awake now. Time away Sarah, their children who broke a statue by accident during a game of football. Maybe she has a point about preparation. Sarah said not meeting my eyes. The family has certain expectations. That's when I overheard the rest of Sarah's phone conversation through our thin bedroom door. Brenda's voice was loud enough to carry through the speaker. "I'm so glad you're finally going to discipline those children properly," Brenda was saying. "Maybe now we can have peaceful family gatherings without constant disruption." I heard Sarah respond, "Yes, maybe some time away will teach them better manners." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My wife had just agreed with her sister's assessment that our children needed to be excluded from family events. She was choosing her birth family's comfort over her stepson's emotional well-being. I spent the next week processing what I'd learned about my wife's priorities. Instead of confronting Sarah directly, I decided to take a different approach. When the family's December cookie decorating party invitation arrived, I quietly made other plans. "The boys and I won't be able to make it Saturday," I told Sarah over dinner. "We've got other commitments." Sarah looked up from her salad. "What commitments?" "The cookie party is a family tradition. Jake signed up for a basketball clinic at the community center." I said, which wasn't technically a lie, since I planned to register him that week. "Tyler wants to go too." The boys perked up at the mention of basketball. They'd been asking to join a team, but Sarah had worried it might conflict with family events. Now seemed like the perfect time to prioritize their interests over her family's expectations. Saturday morning, I drove Jake and Tyler to the Hartford Community Center, a brick building that served families from all economic backgrounds. The basketball clinic was run by Coach Martinez, a retired high school teacher who believed every kid deserved a chance to play, regardless of skill level. "Welcome to the team," Coach Martinez said, shaking hands with both boys. "We focus on fundamentals here, but most importantly, we have fun." I watched my sons run drills with 12 other children of various ethnicities and income levels. Nobody cared that Tyler had scraped knees from falling down during layup practice. Nobody criticized Jake for being too enthusiastic when he made his first free throw. The other parents cheered for all the kids, equally creating an atmosphere of genuine support. "Your boys have good energy," said Maria Santos, whose daughter played point guard. "They're natural team players." "Thank you," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "They love sports, but haven't had many chances to play with other kids their age." "You should bring them to our family game nights," suggested Tom Chen, a teacher whose son played center. "We rotate hosting duties every Friday. Very casual, just pizza and board games." I realized these families offered something Sarah's relatives never had: unconditional acceptance of children being children. Nobody expected 7-year-olds to sit silently through adult conversations or maintain perfect posture during dinner. They celebrated enthusiasm instead of criticizing energy. When Sarah returned from the cookie party that evening, she seemed subdued. "How was basketball?" she asked half-heartedly. "Amazing," Jake announced before I could answer. "Coach Martinez says I have good court vision, and Tyler made 6 free throws in a row." "We're going back next Saturday," Tyler added. "And maybe we can join the Friday night game group with other families." Sarah nodded absently. "The party was fine. Aunt Linda asked where you were." "What did you tell her?" I asked carefully. "That you had prior commitments with the boys' activities." I noticed Sarah didn't mention missing us or wishing we'd been there. She'd apparently enjoyed the gathering more without worrying about her stepson's behavior meeting family standards. Over the following weeks, I kept the boys busy with community activities while Sarah attended her family's New Year's celebration alone. We spent that evening at my brother Marcus's house, where Jake and Tyler played video games with their teenage cousins and helped make homemade pizza. Nobody criticized them for getting flour in their hair or laughing too loudly at Marcus's dad jokes. These kids are growing up fast. Marcus observed while we watched them teach his youngest son to throw a spiral in the backyard. They seem happier lately. They're getting more opportunities to just be kids, I said. Less pressure to perform for adults who don't understand child development. Sarah's family still giving you trouble. I hadn't told Marcus the full story, but he'd picked up on tension during previous visits. Let's just say we're taking a break from formal family gatherings. Good for you, man. Kids need to feel accepted for who they are, not criticized for not meeting impossible standards. When February's family ski trip invitation arrived, I politely declined and arranged for Jake and Tyler to spend the weekend with my parents in West Hartford. My mother had been asking to have them overnight more often, and my father wanted to teach them basic carpentry in his workshop. We're building birdhouses, Tyler announced excitedly during our drive to Grandpa's house. Dad says we can hang them in our backyard when we're done. Grandma promised to teach us her secret pancake recipe, too, Jake added. She says it's been in the family for 3 generations. My parents lived in a modest ranch house with a large backyard and basement workshop. Dad had been a telephone technician before retirement, and Mom worked as a school secretary for 30 years. They understood working-class values and the importance of letting children explore their interests without constant judgment. These boys are treasures, Mom said, while we watched them help Dad measure lumber for their birdhouse project. They're polite, helpful, and full of curiosity about the world. Sarah's family doesn't seem to appreciate those qualities, I admitted. Some people mistake conformity for good behavior, Dad said wisely. Real character comes from kindness, honesty, and resilience. Your boys have all 3. During the Valentine's Day family dinner, I took Jake and Tyler to visit Sarah's parents separately while Sarah attended the main event. We stopped by for a brief courtesy visit, bearing homemade cookies the boys had decorated at school. Linda seemed genuinely pleased to see them accepting their gifts and asking about their basketball progress. Richard was polite, but distant, clearly uncomfortable, without the buffer of a larger family gathering. Neither mentioned Brenda's absence or asked why we weren't staying for dinner. The boys look healthy and happy, Linda commented as we prepared to leave. Basketball seems to be good exercise for them. They're learning teamwork and sportsmanship, I said. Plus, they're making friends with children from different backgrounds. Richard nodded approvingly. Diversity is important for young minds. I found it interesting that both grandparents could interact normally with Jake and Tyler during low-key visits. The problems seemed to arise only during large family gatherings where Brenda controlled the social dynamics. Meanwhile, Sarah's stress level was increasing noticeably. She spent more time on phone calls with family members, conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Her sleep became restless, and she snapped at minor household inconveniences that had never bothered her before. "Is everything okay with your family?" I asked one evening after she'd spent an hour in whispered conversation with someone. "Everything's fine," she said quickly. "Just normal family coordination stuff." But I could see the tension in her posture and the worry lines forming around her eyes. Something was happening within her family circle, and she was keeping me deliberately out of the loop. My suspicion grew when I noticed how carefully Sarah guarded her phone. She'd always been casual about leaving it around the house, but now she carried it everywhere and kept the screen face down during meals. When text notifications chimed, she would quickly check and dismiss them without sharing any information. One evening, while Sarah was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The message preview was visible through the lock screen. "Brenda, thank goodness for some peace finally. When do you think—" The message cut off, but the implication was clear. Sarah's family was discussing something related to peace, and it likely involved the absence of my children from recent gatherings. I felt a chill as I realized there might be more to Sarah's family's behavior than simple preference for quiet dinner parties. When Sarah emerged from the bathroom, I watched her face carefully as she checked her messages. Her expression shifted from casual to concerned, to something that looked almost like guilt. She typed a quick response, deleted it, then typed something else before sending. "Anything important?" I asked casually. "Just Brenda coordinating some family logistics," Sarah said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. I was beginning to suspect that keeping Jake and Tyler away from family gatherings had triggered consequences I hadn't anticipated. But what exactly was happening behind the scenes, and why was Sarah being so secretive about family communications? The first cancellation caught me off guard because it seemed so ordinary. Linda's birthday party in March, traditionally held at Richard's house with extended family and elaborate decorations, was suddenly postponed. "Mom caught a bad flu," Sarah explained when she hung up from Brenda's call. "They're rescheduling for next month when she's feeling better." "That's too bad." I said, though, privately, I felt relieved. Another month without subjecting Jake and Tyler to potential criticism seemed like a gift. "Should we send flowers or soup?" "Brenda says Linda just needs rest. Family visitors might make her feel obligated to host when she should be recovering." The explanation made sense, but something about Sarah's delivery felt rehearsed. She spoke too quickly and avoided eye contact. The same tells she displayed when hiding something from the boys about surprise birthday plans or Christmas presents. Instead of attending a family gathering, I took Jake and Tyler to Fenway Park for opening day. We'd never been to a Red Sox game together, and the boys were thrilled to experience their first Major League Baseball atmosphere. The crowd's energy was infectious, as 37,000 fans cheered for home runs and booed questionable umpire calls. "This is the best day ever," Jake declared during the 7th inning stretch, a mustard stain on his jersey and a huge grin on his face. "Can we come back next month?" Tyler asked, clutching the baseball we'd caught during batting practice. "Absolutely." I promised, realizing how much more relaxed I felt when our family activities didn't require walking on eggshells around Sarah's relatives. The second cancellation happened 6 weeks later during Easter planning. Sarah's family traditionally held an elaborate brunch at Richard's house, complete with professional catering and an Easter egg hunt for children in their formal gardens. This year, the location suddenly changed to an upscale restaurant in downtown Hartford. "The venue doesn't accommodate children well," Sarah explained when she returned from a planning phone call with Brenda. "It's more of an adults-only atmosphere for sophisticated conversation." I found this explanation suspicious since the family had always emphasized including children in holiday celebrations. Linda particularly enjoyed organizing activities for the younger generation, and Richard took pride in his landscaped grounds providing space for outdoor games. "Since when does your family prefer adults-only Easter celebrations?" I asked. "They're trying something different this year," Sarah said defensively. "Sometimes it's nice for adults to have uninterrupted conversations about travel books and current events." "What about the other grandchildren? Are Jeremy's parents okay with leaving their kids out of Easter?" Sarah paused before answering. "Other arrangements are being made for the children." The vague response raised more questions than it answered, but I decided not to push. Instead, I arranged for our family to spend Easter with my extended relatives at my aunt's farm in rural Connecticut. Jake and Tyler hunted eggs among real chickens-fed goats by hand and learned to milk cows under my uncle's patient supervision. "City kids need to understand where their food comes from," Uncle Ray said, while Tyler cautiously approached a friendly heifer. "These boys have good instincts with animals." "They're natural learners," agreed my cousin Beth, who taught elementary school in Waterbury. Jake asks thoughtful questions about animal behavior, and Tyler shows real gentleness with the smaller creatures. Watching my sons thrive in an environment where their curiosity was encouraged rather than stifled, I felt grateful for my decision to prioritize their emotional well-being over Sarah's family obligations. The third cancellation came during Mother's Day planning. This was traditionally Linda's special day, when the entire family gathered to honor her decades of supporting Richard's business ventures and maintaining their social connections. Brenda typically coordinated elaborate celebrations with professional photography and catered meals served on Linda's finest china. The whole thing has been postponed indefinitely, Sarah announced after another lengthy phone consultation with her sister. Brenda says there are too many scheduling conflicts to coordinate everyone's availability. This explanation made even less sense than the previous ones. Mother's Day fell on the same Sunday every year, and Sarah's family prided themselves on maintaining consistent schedules for important celebrations. Richard often boasted about their family's ability to coordinate complex logistics for gatherings that included dozens of relatives and family friends. "What kind of scheduling conflicts?" I pressed. "Work commitments, travel plans, family obligations," Sarah said vaguely. "You know how complicated everyone's lives have become." I definitely didn't know, since Sarah's family members rarely discussed work or travel plans that might conflict with traditional family gatherings. Richard was semi-retired from his car dealerships, Linda's volunteer work was flexible, and Brenda's schedule typically revolved around family events rather than outside commitments. Instead of attending a canceled Mother's Day celebration, I arranged for Sarah and the boys to join me in honoring my own mother at her favorite restaurant. We drove to a family-owned Italian place in Hartford's Little Italy neighborhood, where Mom had been a regular customer for 20 years. Mrs. Sullivan called Tony the owner's son when we walked through the door. "Your grandsons are getting so tall." "They're eating their vegetables," Mom said proudly, hugging Jake and Tyler. "And they're learning good manners from their father." During dinner, I watched Sarah interact with my mother and realized how different their relationship was from Sarah's dynamic with her own family. Mom asked genuine questions about Sarah's teaching work and listened to her answers with real interest. She praised Sarah's efforts with the boys and offered practical support rather than criticism. "You're raising wonderful young men," Mom told Sarah while the boys shared a piece of tiramisu. "They're polite, thoughtful, and full of life. Any family would be lucky to have them." Sarah's eyes welled up at the compliment. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes it's hard to know if we're doing things right." "Trust your instincts," Mom advised. "Children need love, consistency, and room to grow. Everything else is just details." On the drive home, Sarah was unusually quiet. I noticed her wiping away tears and wondered if my mother's unconditional acceptance highlighted the conditional nature of her own family's approval. By May, I was beginning to see a clear pattern in the cancellations. Every major family gathering had been postponed, relocated, or restructured in ways that excluded children or made attendance difficult for our family specifically. The explanations were becoming increasingly thin, and Sarah's stress was mounting with each awkward phone conversation. I decided to pay closer attention to Sarah's family communications, not to spy on my wife, but to understand what was really happening behind the scenes. Her behavior had changed dramatically since Thanksgiving, and I suspected there was more to the story than simple scheduling difficulties. That's when I began noticing how quickly Sarah dismissed text notifications from family members and how carefully she guarded her phone during family discussions. She was clearly participating in conversations I wasn't privy to, and her guilt about keeping secrets was becoming increasingly obvious. One evening, while Sarah was cooking dinner, her phone buzzed repeatedly with text messages. She glanced at the notifications but didn't respond immediately, which was unusual for her typically prompt communication style with family members. "Busy family group chat?" I asked casually. "Just the usual coordination stuff," Sarah said, but her voice sounded strained. When her phone buzzed again, she quickly dried her hands and picked it up. I caught a glimpse of multiple message notifications, all from different family members, suggesting active group communication that required her immediate attention. Sarah read the messages, typed a brief response, then immediately deleted the entire conversation thread. The deletion struck me as particularly suspicious since Sarah typically maintained family message histories for reference when planning future events. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Everything's fine," she said, quickly returning to stirring pasta sauce with unusual concentration. But her hands were trembling slightly, and she kept glancing at her phone as if expecting more urgent messages. Something was definitely happening within her family circle, and her obvious anxiety suggested it involved more than simple party planning difficulties. I was beginning to suspect that my decision to keep Jake and Tyler away from family gatherings had triggered a chain reaction I hadn't anticipated. But what exactly was my absence revealing about Sarah's family dynamics, and why was my wife so desperate to keep me from discovering the truth? Instead of immediately confronting Sarah about her secretive behavior, I decided to gather more information before making any accusations. If there was something bigger happening with her family, I wanted concrete evidence rather than just suspicious feelings. I started by paying closer attention to social media activity from Sarah's relatives. Linda regularly posted photos from family events on Facebook, and Brenda maintained an Instagram account showcasing their affluent lifestyle. If secret family gatherings were happening, digital evidence would likely surface somewhere. My investigation began casually. During my lunch breaks at work sites, I would scroll through social media feeds looking for recent posts from Sarah's family members. For several weeks, I found nothing unusual. Linda's posts featured her garden photography and animal shelter fundraising activities. Brenda shared restaurant reviews and vacation planning content. Then I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Buried in Linda's Facebook photos from 2 weeks earlier was an album titled "Lovely Spring Brunch." The pictures showed exactly what I'd expected: Sarah's extended family gathered around Richard's dining room table for an elaborate meal. The formal place settings, professional flower arrangements, and Sunday dress codes indicated this was a significant family celebration, not a casual get-together. But the most shocking detail was Sarah's Honda Civic clearly visible in the driveway background of one exterior photo. She had attended this gathering without mentioning it to me or bringing Jake and Tyler along. I screenshot the photos and examined them carefully. Every adult family member was present and accounted for, dressed in their finest clothing, and clearly enjoying themselves. The absence of children was obvious and deliberate. No toys, no children's plates, no high chairs or booster seats that typically accommodated younger family members during holiday celebrations. This wasn't a spontaneously organized gathering or a small family meeting. The elaborate food presentation, formal table decorations, and carefully coordinated outfits indicated weeks of advance planning. Sarah had participated in organizing and attending a family event that specifically excluded our children while lying to me about its existence. I felt sick as I realized the depth of Sarah's deception. She hadn't just been enabling her family's criticism of Jake and Tyler. She had been actively participating in their exclusion while maintaining a facade of family unity at home. My phone rang during this discovery, interrupting my investigation. The caller ID showed, "Marcus, my brother's name." "Hey, Sullivan," Marcus said when I answered. "I wanted to check in about something. Beth mentioned seeing Sarah at that fancy restaurant downtown last Sunday. The one where your family was supposed to have Easter brunch before it got canceled." My heart started racing. Sarah was at the restaurant. Beth was there for her anniversary dinner with Jim. She said she waved at Sarah, but Sarah didn't seem to notice. She was sitting with a large group that looked like a family celebration. What time was this? Around noon, maybe 12:30. Beth said it looked like the whole extended family was there, all dressed up like it was a special occasion. I thanked Marcus for the information and hung up my mind, reeling. Sarah had attended the Easter celebration that was supposedly canceled due to venue limitations. She had lied about the cancellation attended without us, and then returned home to maintain the pretense that the event had never happened. The pattern was becoming sickeningly clear. Sarah's family hadn't been canceling events due to scheduling conflicts or venue problems. They had been holding the gatherings secretly, without Jake, Tyler, and me, while telling Sarah to provide cover stories about cancellations and postponements. I needed more evidence before confronting Sarah, partly because I hoped I was wrong, and partly because I wanted to understand the full scope of the deception before demanding explanations. That evening, I watched Sarah's behavior more carefully during dinner. She seemed nervous and distracted frequently, checking her phone and responding to messages with quick, secretive replies. When Jake asked about upcoming family events, Sarah provided vague answers about busy schedules and uncertain planning. "When can we see Grandma Linda again?" Tyler asked innocently. "I want to show her my basketball trophy from the community center." "Soon, honey," Sarah said without meeting his eyes. "Grandma's been very busy lately with her volunteer work." I knew this was a lie since Linda's Facebook posts showed regular social activities and family visits. She wasn't too busy to see her grandsons. She was participating in their deliberate exclusion. After putting the boys to bed, I decided to test Sarah's honesty directly. "How's your family doing?" I asked while we cleaned the kitchen together. "We haven't seen them much lately." "Everyone's fine," Sarah said quickly. "Just dealing with typical family logistics and scheduling challenges. Maybe we should reach out to plan something for Memorial Day weekend. The boys love spending time with their cousins." Sarah's face went pale. "I'm not sure what the family has planned yet. Brenda usually coordinates the summer schedule. Should I call Brenda directly to discuss possibilities?" "No," Sarah said sharply, then tried to recover. "I mean, she prefers handling family planning through me. I'll ask her about Memorial Day options." The panic in Sarah's voice confirmed my suspicions. She was terrified of me communicating directly with her family because it would expose the lies she'd been maintaining about canceled events and scheduling conflicts. That night, I lay awake considering my options. I could confront Sarah immediately with the evidence I'd gathered, but I sensed there was more to discover about her family's behavior and her level of participation in deceiving me. I decided to give Sarah one more opportunity to be honest before revealing what I knew. The next morning over coffee, I brought up family relationships again. "I've been thinking about the boys' relationship with your extended family," I said carefully. "They used to be so excited about family gatherings, but lately they don't seem to miss them much." Sarah stiffened. "Children adapt to changes in routine. Do you think they feel rejected by the recent cancellations and schedule changes? I'm sure they understand that adult logistics can be complicated. Jake asked me yesterday why Aunt Brenda doesn't like them anymore. I wasn't sure how to answer." Sarah's coffee cup trembled in her hands. "Brenda doesn't dislike the boys. She just has strong opinions about proper behavior in formal settings. So strong that she prefers they don't attend family gatherings anymore." "That's not what I said." "But it's what's happening, isn't it? Every major family event since Thanksgiving has been canceled or restructured in ways that exclude children." Sarah stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the kitchen floor. "I need to get ready for work." She left the room without answering my questions, but her reaction confirmed that my suspicions were accurate. Sarah was actively participating in a conspiracy to exclude Jake and Tyler from family events while lying about the reasons for their absence. I spent that day at work thinking about next steps. I loved my wife, but I couldn't tolerate her betraying my children's emotional well-being to maintain peace with her manipulative family. Jake and Tyler deserved better than being scapegoated for adult dysfunction they couldn't understand or control. By evening, I had decided to gather one more piece of evidence before demanding complete honesty from Sarah. I needed to understand exactly what her family was saying about us during their secret gatherings, and how deeply Sarah was involved in planning our exclusion. My opportunity came sooner than expected when Sarah's phone rang during dinner. The caller ID showed Emma, Sarah's young cousin who had been present during Brenda's Thanksgiving attack on the boys. Sarah answered the call, but quickly stepped onto our back porch for privacy. Through the sliding door, I could hear fragments of an intense conversation that lasted nearly 20 minutes. Emma's voice was raised enough to carry through the glass, and she sounded upset about something related to family meetings and treating children badly. When Sarah returned to the kitchen, her face was flushed, and she looked genuinely distressed. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Family drama," Sarah said dismissively. "Emma's going through a difficult phase with some relatives." But I suspected Emma's call was related to something much more specific than general family tensions. Her timing, Sarah's reaction, and the mention of children suggested Emma might be the key to understanding what had really been happening during our family's exclusion from recent gatherings. The next morning, I received a text message from an unknown number that changed everything I thought I knew about my wife's family dynamics. "This is Emma, Sarah's cousin. I got your number from the family directory. I need to talk to you about what's been happening at family gatherings. Can you meet me for coffee today? It's important that you know the truth about how your children have been discussed." My hands trembled as I read the message. Emma was Sarah's youngest cousin, probably 25 years old, who worked as a social worker in Hartford. She had always seemed different from the rest of Sarah's family, more genuine, and less concerned with maintaining appearances. If anyone would speak honestly about family dysfunction, it would be Emma. I agreed to meet her at a neutral coffee shop during my lunch break. Emma was already waiting when I arrived, looking nervous but determined. She had brought a folder of papers and seemed prepared for a serious conversation. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, after we ordered coffee. "I've been struggling with whether to tell you what's been happening, but after last night's phone call with Sarah, I can't stay silent anymore." "What's been happening?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the basic outline. "Your family has been deliberately excluded from every gathering since Thanksgiving," Emma said bluntly. "Not because of scheduling conflicts or venue limitations, but because Brenda convinced everyone that your children were disruptive influences who needed to be taught a lesson." The words hit like physical blows, even though I'd suspected the truth. Hearing it confirmed by a family member made the betrayal feel more real and more painful. "Sarah's been attending these gatherings?" I asked. "Every single one," Emma confirmed. "She's been part of the planning discussions and has actively participated in maintaining the deception about cancellations and postponements." Emma opened her folder and pulled out printed screenshots of group text messages. "I documented these conversations because I knew someone needed to speak up for your children. This is what your wife's family has really been saying about Jake and Tyler." I read through the messages with growing anger and disgust. Brenda's comments were particularly vicious, referring to my sons as uncontrolled animals and embarrassments to family dignity. Richard had written about establishing boundaries with problematic family members. Linda had agreed that peaceful gatherings require removing disruptive elements. But the most shocking messages were from Sarah herself. She had written, The boys need to learn that actions have consequences, and maybe some separation will help them understand appropriate behavior expectations. Sarah wrote these. I asked, feeling sick. She's been an active participant in planning your exclusion, Emma said gently. But I think she's also been trapped by family pressure. Uncle Richard controls everyone through financial manipulation, and Aunt Linda goes along with whatever he decides. Brenda acts as his enforcer. Emma explained that Richard had threatened to cut off Sarah's trust fund access if she didn't support the family's decision to exclude my children. Sarah's inheritance included substantial funds that we'd been counting on for the boys' college education and our mortgage payments. Your wife has been torn between loyalty to her birth family and loyalty to her chosen family, Emma said. But she's definitely chosen to prioritize her parents' approval over her stepson's emotional well-being. The evidence Emma provided painted a picture of systematic emotional abuse directed at children who had committed no sin other than being energetic 7-year-olds from a working-class background. Richard's control extended beyond simple party planning into manipulation of family members' financial security and social relationships. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because what they're doing to Jake and Tyler is wrong, Emma said firmly. I'm a social worker. I see the damage that adult dysfunction causes to innocent children. Your boys are being emotionally abused by people who should be protecting them. Emma revealed that she had been documenting the family's behavior because she planned to limit her own involvement with relatives who would treat children so cruelly. Several other family members had expressed private concerns about the exclusion campaign, but were afraid to speak up publicly. Uncle Richard runs the family like a dictatorship, she explained. He uses money and social pressure to control everyone's behavior. People who challenge his decisions get cut off from family resources and social connections. What about Sarah? How trapped is she really? Emma hesitated before answering. She has choices, but they're difficult ones. If she stands up for your children, she loses her inheritance and probably faces family rejection. If she continues enabling the exclusion, she betrays her marriage and damages her stepson's emotional development. The picture Emma painted helped me understand Sarah's behavior over the past several months, but it didn't excuse her choices. Protecting children from emotional abuse should take priority over maintaining access to family money or avoiding uncomfortable confrontations. There's something else you need to know, Emma said, looking even more uncomfortable. The family is planning something for this weekend that's designed to force a crisis in your marriage. She showed me more text messages revealing that Richard had suffered what the family was calling a medical emergency, requiring immediate family support. Sarah would be expected to rush to his bedside for an extended hospital vigil, leaving me and the boys behind. Is Richard actually sick? I asked. He's perfectly healthy, Emma said. This is a manufactured crisis designed to test Sarah's loyalty. If she brings you and the children to the hospital, the family will know she's chosen you over them. If she comes alone, they'll have successfully separated her from your family during a supposed emergency. I felt a cold fury building as I realized the extent of the manipulation campaign. This wasn't just about excluding my children from party invitations. Sarah's family was actively working to destroy my marriage by forcing my wife to choose between financial security and family loyalty. What do you think I should do? I asked. Expose the truth, Emma said without hesitation. Call their bluff on the fake medical emergency. Make Sarah choose publicly between enabling her family's abuse of your children or protecting the family she created with you. Emma offered to provide testimony about the family's behavior if I needed legal documentation for custody or divorce proceedings. She also gave me contact information for other family members who had been privately expressing concerns about Richard's controlling behavior and Brenda's cruelty toward children. "Your sons deserve better than this," Emma said as we prepared to leave. "They deserve adults who will protect them from emotional abuse rather than participating in it for financial gain." That afternoon, I sat in my work truck thinking about everything Emma had revealed. My wife had been living a double life for months, attending secret family gatherings while lying about their existence, participating in discussions about excluding my children while pretending to support family harmony at home. The financial pressure provided context for Sarah's choices, but didn't excuse them. Jake and Tyler needed advocates who would prioritize their emotional well-being over adult convenience or financial considerations. If Sarah couldn't be that advocate, I would have to protect them myself. When I arrived home that evening, Sarah was pacing the kitchen with her phone pressed to her ear. Her face was pale, and she looked genuinely panicked. "Yes, I understand," she was saying. "I can be there within an hour. Should I bring anything specific?" She hung up and turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Dad's had a heart attack. He's in the emergency room at Hartford Hospital. I need to go immediately." I looked at my wife, knowing that her father was perfectly healthy, and that this was exactly the manufactured crisis Emma had warned me about. Sarah was about to be tested on whether she would abandon her family to rush to a fake emergency, and she didn't even realize she was being manipulated. "I'll come with you," I said. "The boys can come too. If Richard's seriously ill, the whole family should be there." Sarah's expression shifted to panic. "No, that's not necessary. Hospital visits are stressful for children, and Dad might not be up for visitors. If he's having a heart attack, this could be our last chance for the boys to see their grandfather. I really think it's better if I go alone first to assess the situation." I realized this was my moment of truth. I could let Sarah rush off to her fake emergency and continue living the lie, or I could force a confrontation that would expose her family's manipulation and demand honesty about her choices. "Sarah," I said quietly, "I know what's really happening here, and I think it's time we had a completely honest conversation about your family's behavior toward our children." The color drained from her face as she realized I had discovered something significant about her months of deception. I made a decision that would force the truth into the open and protect my children from further emotional manipulation. Instead of letting Sarah rush off to her fake emergency alone, I would accompany her to the hospital and bring Jake and Tyler along. If her family wanted to test loyalties and create artificial crises, they would have to do it in front of the children they'd been excluding. "We're all going to the hospital," I announced calmly. "If Richard is really having a medical emergency, Jake and Tyler should have the opportunity to say goodbye to their grandfather." Sarah's panic was immediate and obvious. "Sullivan, I don't think that's appropriate. Children shouldn't be exposed to intensive care situations. The boys are 7 years old, not toddlers. They can handle visiting a hospital if it means seeing their grandfather during a family crisis." I called Jake and Tyler from the backyard where they'd been playing catch before dinner. "Boys, we need to go to the hospital to check on Grandpa Richard. Get your jackets and meet us at the car." "Is Grandpa okay?" Jake asked, immediately concerned. "We're going to find out," I said honestly. "Sometimes adults get sick and need medical help." Tyler ran inside to get their jackets, while Jake asked more questions about hospitals and heart problems. I answered as honestly as possible, while Sarah stood frozen in the kitchen, clearly terrified about bringing us to what she knew was a manufactured crisis. During the drive to Hartford Hospital, I called Emma to let her know we were coming. She agreed to meet us in the emergency room to help document whatever confrontation was about to unfold. I also texted my brother Marcus to let him know about the situation, asking him to be available if I needed backup support. "Are you sure bringing the boys is the right choice?" Sarah asked quietly, while the children discussed what they knew about hospitals from television shows. "If your father is genuinely ill, they should have the chance to see him," I said. "If he's not actually sick, then we're about to discover something important about your family's honesty." Sarah fell silent, probably realizing that her months of deception were about to be exposed in front of our children and her extended family. We arrived at Hartford Hospital around 7 p.m. The emergency room was moderately busy, with typical evening cases, elderly patients with chest pains, parents with feverish children, and a few accident victims. I checked with the registration desk about Richard's status. "I don't see any patient by that name in our emergency department," the clerk said, after checking her computer system. "Are you sure he was brought to this hospital?" Sarah's face went white. "Maybe they took him to a different facility. Let me call Brenda for more information." While Sarah stepped away to make her call, I spotted Emma entering through the main doors. She looked around the waiting area and approached us when she saw Jake and Tyler sitting quietly in plastic chairs. "How are you boys doing?" Emma asked gently. "I heard your grandfather might be sick." "We came to visit him," Tyler explained. "But the lady at the desk says he's not here." "Sometimes hospitals are confusing places," Emma said diplomatically. "Let's see what we can figure out." Sarah returned from her phone call, looking increasingly distressed. "Brenda says Dad was taken to St. Francis Hospital instead. We should drive over there immediately." "That's interesting," Emma said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I just spoke to Aunt Linda 20 minutes ago, and she told me Uncle Richard was feeling much better and resting comfortably at home." The contradiction hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Sarah stared at Emma with a mixture of horror and betrayal, realizing that her cousin was about to expose the entire deception. "There seems to be some confusion about Richard's condition," I said calmly. "Maybe we should call him directly to check on his health." "He might not be able to talk if he's in intensive care," Sarah said desperately. Emma pulled out her phone. "Let me call Uncle Richard right now to see how he's doing." Before Sarah could stop her, Emma dialed Richard's home number and put the call on speakerphone. After 3 rings, Richard answered in a completely normal voice. "Hello, Emma. How are you doing tonight?" "Hi, Uncle Richard. I'm at the hospital with Sullivan, Sarah, and the boys. We heard you had a heart attack and came to visit you." There was a long silence before Richard responded. "I'm afraid there's been some miscommunication. I'm at home feeling perfectly fine." Jake and Tyler looked confused as they processed this information. "But Mom said Grandpa was sick," Tyler said quietly. "Sometimes adults make mistakes about information." I explained, though my voice was tight with controlled anger. Emma continued her phone conversation with Richard. "So you haven't had any medical problems today?" "None at all. I spent the afternoon working in the garden and had a nice dinner with your Aunt Linda. We're both in excellent health." Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the hospital floor. Her fabricated emergency had been completely exposed in front of our children and the family member who'd been documenting her months of deception. "Well, I'm glad you're feeling well," Emma said. "We'll let you get back to your evening." After hanging up, Emma turned to address our small group. "It seems like there was some confusion about Uncle Richard's health. Since everyone's fine, maybe we should use this opportunity to discuss what's really been happening with family gatherings lately." I realized this was the moment I'd been building toward for months. With Jake and Tyler present as witnesses, and Emma available to provide documentation, I could finally confront Sarah about her family's systematic exclusion of my children and her participation in the deception. "Sarah," I said quietly, "I think it's time you told the boys and me the truth about why we haven't been invited to family gatherings since Thanksgiving." "Can we discuss this at home?" Sarah pleaded, glancing nervously at the children. No, I think we should discuss it now with Emma here as a witness, so there's no confusion about facts. I pulled out my phone and showed Sarah the screenshots Emma had provided of the family group text messages. I have documentation of your family's real opinions about Jake and Tyler, and evidence of your participation in planning their exclusion from family events. Sarah's face crumpled as she realized the extent of what I'd discovered. Sullivan, please not here. Mom, what's wrong? Jake asked, picking up on the tension between his parents. Emma knelt down to the boy's level. Sometimes adults have disagreements about family rules. Your dad is trying to make sure you're treated fairly by all your relatives. I made the decision to speak directly to my children about what had been happening. They deserved to understand why they'd been excluded from family gatherings, and to hear that the exclusion wasn't their fault. Boys, some of Mom's family members decided they didn't want you at their parties anymore because you're energetic and like to play games. That's not fair to you, and it's not your fault. You're wonderful children who deserve to be accepted by your family. But we didn't do anything really bad. Tyler said, his voice small and confused. You're absolutely right. You broke a statue by accident while playing football, which is something that happens sometimes. But some adults decided to punish you by not inviting you to family celebrations anymore. Jake's eyes filled with tears. Is that why we haven't seen our cousins? Yes, and that's why your father has been taking you to basketball practice and community center activities instead, Emma explained. He's been protecting you from adults who weren't treating you kindly. Sarah finally spoke up, her voice shaking. The family has strong opinions about children's behavior in formal settings. The family has been emotionally abusing children, I corrected. And you've been participating in it while lying to me about the reasons. The confrontation was happening in a hospital waiting room, but I realized this was exactly where it needed to occur. Public enough to prevent extreme reactions with witnesses present and with the fake emergency. Exposed as the manipulation tactic it had always been. Emma addressed Sarah directly. Your family has been holding secret gatherings for months while telling you to lie about cancellations and postponements. Uncle Richard threatened to cut off your inheritance if you didn't support excluding Sullivan's children. Brenda has been calling Jake and Tyler terrible names behind their backs. And you've been participating in all of it instead of protecting your stepsons. The truth was finally out in the open, documented and witnessed with my children present, to understand that their exclusion hadn't been their fault, and that their father had been working to protect them from emotional abuse disguised as family standards. The hospital waiting room confrontation marked the beginning of the most difficult and transformative period of our family's life. With the truth exposed and Emma providing documentation of months of deception, Sarah had to make a definitive choice between enabling her birth family's manipulation or protecting the children she'd helped raise. I want to go home, Tyler said quietly, overwhelmed by the adult conflict he'd witnessed. That's a good idea, I agreed, picking up my son and holding him close. We've learned what we needed to know tonight. During the drive home, Sarah cried silently in the passenger seat, while Jake and Tyler asked careful questions about family relationships and adult behavior. I answered as honestly as possible, explaining that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and that good parents work to protect their children from unfair treatment. Are we still going to see our cousins? Jake asked. We're going to work on making sure you have healthy relationships with family members who treat you with kindness and respect. I promised. Over the following week, Sarah faced intense pressure from her family to maintain the status quo and continue excluding my children from gatherings. Richard called repeatedly, alternating between anger about Emma's betrayal and attempts to bribe Sarah with promises of increased inheritance access. Brenda was furious that her manipulation campaign had been exposed. She sent Sarah lengthy text messages demanding loyalty to family traditions and accusing me of turning Sarah against her blood relatives. When Sarah didn't respond immediately to these messages, Brenda escalated to threatening phone calls about consequences for disloyalty. But Emma had been building a coalition of family members who were tired of Richard's controlling behavior and Brenda's bullying tactics. Sarah's Uncle Tom. Richard's younger brother had been privately documenting years of similar manipulation directed at his own children. Linda's sister Margaret had stopped attending family gatherings because of Brenda's criticism of her parenting choices. The manufactured hospital emergency became a catalyst for multiple family members to speak up about Richard's pattern of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. Within 2 weeks, a family intervention was organized by the relatives who had been afraid to challenge the power structure individually, but found strength in collective action. Sarah attended this intervention with Emma and me as support. We brought documentation of the months of deception and exclusion, including the group text messages that revealed the family's real attitudes toward Jake and Tyler. Richard was confronted by 8 adult family members about his use of financial threats to control family relationships. Linda was challenged about her enabling of Brenda's cruel behavior toward children. Brenda faced direct criticism from cousins who had witnessed her verbal attacks on various family members over the years. These children have done nothing wrong except be energetic 7-year-olds, Uncle Tom stated firmly. Excluding them from family gatherings because they accidentally broke a statue is cruel and unreasonable. Your grandson Jeremy was playing the same game and threw the pass that led to the accident, Margaret added. Why are Jake and Tyler being punished for something that was clearly an accident during normal play? The intervention forced family members to examine their complicity in a system that had prioritized superficial appearances over genuine relationships. Several relatives admitted they had privately disagreed with the exclusion campaign, but had been afraid to speak up due to fear of losing family connections or financial support. Sarah made a public commitment to prioritize her husband and children over maintaining peace with manipulative relatives. I've been wrong to participate in excluding Jake and Tyler from family gatherings, she admitted. They're wonderful children who deserve unconditional acceptance from their family. Richard initially resisted the intervention, threatening to cut off inheritance access for anyone who challenged his authority. But when multiple family members called his bluff simultaneously, his control structure collapsed. Linda announced she was filing for separation and seeking her fair share of marital assets accumulated over 40 years of marriage. Brenda found herself isolated when the family members she'd been manipulating refused to continue enabling her bullying behavior. David, her lawyer husband, privately admitted he'd been concerned about his wife's treatment of children, but hadn't known how to address it constructively. The most powerful moment of the intervention came when Jake and Tyler were invited to address the adults who had excluded them. Both boys spoke with remarkable maturity about their confusion over the rejection and their hurt feelings about being called names by relatives. We just wanted to play with our cousins and be part of the family, Jake said simply. We didn't understand why breaking the statue by accident made everyone so angry at us. Dad taught us to apologize when we make mistakes and try to fix things, Tyler added. But nobody would let us apologize or help clean up. Their innocent responses highlighted the adults' dysfunction by contrast. Several family members were moved to tears as they realized how their behavior had affected children who had done nothing to deserve exclusion or verbal abuse. Brenda was required to apologize directly to Jake and Tyler for her cruel comments and treatment. Her apology was reluctant, but public witnessed by the entire extended family. I'm sorry for calling you names and saying you couldn't come to family parties, she said stiffly. That was wrong of me. The boys accepted her apology, graciously demonstrating the emotional maturity that had been completely missed by adults who were focused on criticizing their energy levels and childhood behavior. Over the following months, Sarah's family underwent significant restructuring. Richard began attending therapy to address his controlling behavior patterns after Linda's separation forced him to confront the consequences of emotional manipulation. He also started taking medication for anxiety that had been manifesting as need for excessive control over family dynamics. Linda moved into her own apartment and began rebuilding relationships with family members based on genuine affection rather than obligation. She started attending Jake's basketball games and Tyler's school performances, developing individual relationships with her grandsons that weren't filtered through Brenda's disapproval. Brenda entered counseling to address her pattern of using criticism and exclusion to maintain social control. Her therapist helped her understand how childhood experiences with a perfectionist mother had led her to repeat dysfunctional patterns with the next generation. The family developed new traditions that prioritized inclusion and authentic relationships over formal appearances. Gatherings became more casual with activities designed around children's interests, rather than adult conversations that excluded younger family members. Sarah and I attended couples therapy to rebuild trust after months of deception and conflicting loyalties. Our therapist helped Sarah understand how financial manipulation had influenced her choices and supported her in developing independence from her birth family's control. Most importantly, Jake and Tyler began thriving in an environment where their personalities were celebrated rather than criticized. They continued their basketball activities at the community center, while also developing healthier relationships with extended family members who learned to appreciate their energy and curiosity. 6 months after the hospital confrontation, our family attended Richard's 70th birthday celebration. The gathering was dramatically different from previous events. Children played freely in the backyard without adult criticism. Conversations included multiple generations instead of excluding younger voices. Jake and Tyler were welcomed warmly by relatives who had learned to value authentic relationships over superficial appearances. "These boys have brought so much joy back to our family," Linda told me while watching her grandsons teach younger cousins to throw spirals in the backyard. "I can't believe we almost lost this because of Brenda's unreasonable expectations." Richard approached me during the party to make a personal apology. "I allowed fear and control to damage relationships with wonderful grandchildren," he admitted. "Your sons are remarkable young men, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to know them better. The transformation wasn't complete or perfect." Brenda still struggled with accepting children's normal behavior, and Richard occasionally reverted to controlling tendencies during stressful family discussions. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted from manipulation and exclusion toward inclusion and authentic connection. Sarah's relationship with her family became healthier as she learned to set boundaries and prioritize her immediate family's well-being over avoiding conflict with difficult relatives. She stopped participating in group text conversations that involved criticizing other family members and began advocating directly for her stepsons when situations arose. The boys learned valuable lessons about standing up to unfair treatment and the importance of having adults who will advocate for children's well-being. They developed resilience and self-confidence that served them well in other challenging situations. Emma became a closer family friend, bonding with Sarah over their shared experience of breaking free from toxic family patterns. Her decision to document the manipulation and speak up for excluded children created a model for other family members who had been afraid to challenge dysfunction. The community center basketball program remained central to the boys' social development. Coach Martinez and the other families provided a supportive environment that contrasted sharply with the conditional acceptance they'd experienced from some relatives. These relationships reinforced the lesson that healthy families celebrate children's personalities rather than demanding conformity to unrealistic expectations. As I reflect on this experience 1 year later, I'm grateful for the crisis that forced our family to confront manipulation disguised as tradition. Jake and Tyler are confident, happy children who know they have adults willing to protect them from unfair treatment. Sarah has learned to trust her own judgment about parenting rather than deferring to relatives who prioritize appearances over children's emotional well-being. The most important lesson from this journey is that authentic family relationships require courage to confront dysfunction when it affects innocent children. Sometimes protecting the people we love means challenging systems that seem easier to tolerate than to change. Jake and Tyler didn't deserve to be excluded from family gatherings because they accidentally broke a statue during normal childhood play. No children should be emotionally punished by adults who mistake conformity for character. Real family love supports children's development rather than demanding they suppress natural energy and curiosity to make adults more comfortable. The strength to stand up for what's right often emerges during moments when staying silent feels safer, but protecting others matters more than avoiding conflict. My sons needed an advocate willing to expose manipulation and demand better treatment, even when doing so risked family relationships that seemed important, but were built on conditional acceptance. Today, our family gatherings are filled with genuine laughter, authentic conversations, and children who feel valued for who they are rather than criticized for failing to meet unrealistic expectations. The transformation required difficult conversations and uncomfortable confrontations, but the result has been healthier relationships for everyone involved. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our children is refuse to accept their mistreatment, even when that mistreatment comes from people we're supposed to respect. Protecting kids from emotional abuse disguised as family standards isn't divisive. It's essential for their healthy development and our integrity as parents. Jake and Tyler are growing into young men who understand the difference between earned respect and demanded compliance, between genuine family love and conditional acceptance based on perfect behavior. These lessons will serve them well as they navigate relationships throughout their lives. The experience also taught me about the power of allies like Emma, who risk family relationships to protect children from adult dysfunction. Having someone willing to document abuse and speak truth during confrontations made the difference between continued manipulation and genuine change. What challenges have you faced when family dynamics affected your children's well-being? How do you balance maintaining family relationships with protecting kids from unfair treatment? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to this story about standing up for children who deserve unconditional family love. Please like this video if it resonated with your experiences, subscribe for more stories about navigating family challenges, and share with others who might benefit from hearing about the importance of advocating for kids in difficult situations. Remember that healthy families celebrate children's personalities rather than demanding conformity to unrealistic expectations. Sometimes, the most important gift we can give our kids is the courage to challenge systems that don't serve their best interests, even when doing so requires difficult conversations with people we love.